In this next question, we're asked to write a function, and this function has to count the vowels in a file given a file name. So let's see how we're going to do this. Well, I'm going to have to say def, let's say vowel count, and I'm going to get a file name as an argument, so I'll say here file name. And then what? Well, this is going to require us to do a bunch of different things. First of all, we're going to have to open the file, and we're going to have to look at its content. We're going to have to grab each character and decide is it or is not a vowel. Then we're going to have to count it, and then we're going to have to return it to our caller. All that is great. There are a whole lot of different things we can do here. So let's start. Let's start with the easiest way to do it, and then we'll sort of make it more and more interesting and useful. So the first thing is I should really grab the contents of the file. And here's one way to do it. I can say here, right, text equals open file name, right? Well, actually, let's do this. I'm going to say here f equals open file name, and then text equals f.read. So what am I doing here? When I say open, I'm creating a new file object. And I don't have to specify that I want to read from it because that's the default. I could, if I really want to, say here open file name R. And we're going to assume here that it's a text file. If it's a binary file, then all bets are off. First of all, it's probably not going to have any vowels, at least not vowels worth talking about. And second of all, then we'll have to worry about byte strings. We're going to assume here it is actually a legitimate text file and that it's encoded in UTF-8 with Unicode, so we don't have to worry about all that other stuff. And we get back a file object, which I'm putting in F. And then I invoke the read method, and read returns a string containing all the contents of the file, and we're going to put that into text. So now what can I do? Well, now I can go through text one character at a time, and I can check, is the character a vowel? Now, here's the thing. Text is a string because read always returns a string. So let's do this. I'm going to say here count equals 0. I'll say for one character in text. And then what? Well, now I want to find out, is this character a vowel? Well, there are a few different ways in which I can check that. But an easy way to do that is actually to use a string of vowels and to search inside of that. Here's what I mean. I can say if one character in AIOU. Because a string is a container, it's a sequence, we can run in on it, we can search inside of it in this way. We can say, if the container is in AIOU, then what? Well, then let's say count plus equal 1. And if it's not, well, we don't care. We're going to ignore it. Now, you could argue that maybe I should be worrying about uppercase and lowercase letters. So let's add AEIOU there as well. So we're going to go through that one at a time. And then we can say here, return count. And there we go. So now I can even run, hey, vowel count on, let's do on Etsy password. And it'll say there are 1,678 different vowels in there. Well, is that true? Is that not true? I don't know. I haven't really checked in any other way. So I'm going to create a quick little test file just to play with that. So I'm going to say here with open, we'll call this vowel test.txt for writing as out file. And I'm going to say here, let's do something like this, out file write ABCDE, and then out file write ABCDE, and that's good enough for me. Right, so now if I do a cat on vowel test.txt, we will indeed see that we have that in our file. And so now if I run vowel count on vowel test, we should see 4. Oh, and it helps to actually put in the extension there and not get so excited. And we have 4. Okay, so it looks to me, even without running a sort of test, that we're doing a pretty good job in this file, in this function. But could we have done better? Of course we could have done better. Here's the biggest first thing that I would point to. This here, f.read. What's wrong with f.read? Doesn't it work? Yes, it works great, but let's think about what it does. It goes to the file and retrieves all of the file's contents and returns that as a string. Now, in our particular case, who cares? We've got like a tiny little file here of, what is it, 5, 6, it's 12 bytes overall. No one's memory is going to have problems with a 12-byte file, at least I hope not. But what if I've got a really large file, like a huge log file? What if I've got a file that's like a terabyte or 2 terabytes long? So Python's going to read from it, try to create a string, and basically explode or just crash or just exit trying to do so, trying to create a string that allocates that much memory. It's just not going to be possible. So you could say, okay, oh well, that's what happens. But actually in Python, we have a better way to deal with this. I can iterate over the file one line at a time. And if I do that, yes, it'll take a little bit longer, but at least I don't run the danger of running out of memory trying to count vowels in the file. So I can say here, for example, for one line in F, So there I've got one line in F. And now what can I do? Well, let's do this. I'm going to say here, something like this. I'm going to keep the count over here. Actually, I'm going to move it up top, and you'll see why in a little bit. And then I open the file, and I say for one line in file, and then I can say nested loop for one character in one line. If one character in AARU, then count plus equal 1. And at the end here, we will return count, meaning I have a nested loop. I'm going to iterate over the lines in my file, so each line one at a time, and then I'm going to go through each character in the current line, and I'm going to say for each and every character, is this a vowel? If so, add to the count. If not, ignore it. And so now if I run it, I get, well, exactly the same output for etc password, and vowel count, don't forget the extension, txt. What did I do? Oh, I called it vowel test. I got the extension right, yeah? There we go. Okay, 4. So that's working okay. So this actually will work fine. But there are at least two more things I want to deal with here. One is, look at what I'm doing. I'm defining this variable f that will then refer to our open file, and then I'm iterating over it. Why should I waste a good local variable? I can just do this. For one line in open, file name R. And that works just fine. I don't even need the R, but like, it doesn't hurt. And I can run this, and it works exactly the same way. This is, I would say, a little more idiomatic Python. If you want to use, if you need to use the file object, then that's fine later on. But in many, many cases when we're just reading through files, we don't actually need to keep a file object around. We're just interested in iterating over it. So this is pretty idiomatic Python. I'd say that's fine. What else might we want to do here? I can think of one, maybe two more things, actually. One is, what if the file doesn't exist or gives us trouble or something like that? So at this point, we will be raising an error. So if I say, and you even saw this here, if I give it a file name that doesn't exist, it's going to say file not found error. So let's try this. Let's try here. We can say try, and this is going to use an exception handler. And I'm going to say here try. If everything goes well, then great. And I can say except file not found error. And say as e, and then I can say here print no such file name, right? And then I can say return 0. Actually, I don't even need to do return 0 because the count is already 0. So now if I try to do that, it's going to print no such file, blah 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 blah, and we get back 0. That works pretty well. Now, what if I try to say here vowel count on just etc, which is a directory? It can give me a different error, is a directory error. So we can add a few more of these clauses if we want. It depends on sort of how much you want to worry about beefing things up. Is a directory error. And then we can say here, file name is a directory. Use files. Right, and so that'll give us this, and this will give us this. Right, so this is sort of a more robust version. Could you make it even more robust? I'd say so. But look, if we're talking about a job interview here, I think if you show that you're going to read the file line by line, if you understand how to search in a string, if you understand how to do exception handling, if you understand how to keep track of this sort of stuff, then you should be just fine.